Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of AskReddit with Doctor Eazy. Today's question of the day is, workers who got their bosses fired, how? Here we have our first friend. My name is Judy Garland saying, I used to work at a title company and witness our department manager forge mortgage documents on a fairly regular basis. So when she went to upper management to throw the entire department under the bus for being behind on recording documents, I marched straight to HR to resign and let them know what she was doing. She was fired, and they called me and offered my job back before the week was out. Here we have our next user, Antistis, saying, worked register at a tour company. I also had a manager who effing hated me for some reason. She was probably the BS person I've ever met. Constantly yelled at us for no reason, got on to me about answering questions a new hire had, wrote down I was 30 minutes late for a shift when I was 2 minutes late, etc., etc. We had a sneaking suspicion that she was taking money from our tills, as she was always the one who counted down the till when someone got fired for stealing cash. I made it a habit to count down every bill when I gave it back to a customer, because we would get paid docked if we were even $1 off. So if a customer had $23 in change, I'd count 20, 1, 2, 3 in front of them. So I knew I'd given back the right amount. We also had cameras pouring at the registers. Well, one day my general manager pulls me aside and says $20 was missing from my till, and they were going to fire me. I should have told my boss that she could look at the cameras because I counted out all of my bills for customers. Lo and behold, BB was the one who counted down my till and got caught on tape pocketing the money. She was gone by my next shift. F you, Jennifer. I won. Not my story, but my mother's. I watched on the sidelines as a teenager. My mother's job was basically a professional fundraiser. I really don't know what else to call it. People came to her for help to raise money for nonprofits or other foundations that needed it. This was a long time ago before social workers were more of a mandatory thing at high schools. My high school was very poor and did not have one, so my mother took it upon herself to set up a fundraiser to pay for the salary of a social worker so my high school could have one. After raising all the money, she went to talk to the principal, who flat out refused to take any of it and said the position just wasn't necessary. My mother was pretty upset and just decided she would donate the money to supplies or something like that. Honestly, I have no idea what she did with it, but it did go to some sort of charity. After a few months at the Christmas party, the superintendent of all the public schools in the area was at the same party, and he struck up a conversation with my mother. After some small talk, my mother said it was such a shame that the principal did not take the money for the social worker's position. The superintendent was dumbstruck and then told her that he had ordered the principal to find funding for that position, and when the superintendent asked him about it, he replied with, no one is interested in that, and we just couldn't get the money for it. Needless to say, he lost his position, and whenever we came back from the holiday break, the school was hiring for his position. Here we have a fan favorite, Penny_Can, saying, management was giving an injured worker shit, not wanting to pay him, accusing him of gold bricking. Worker said, tell you what, do the right thing here, or you will be sorry. Management said, take your best shot. Worker called the EPA and APCD, told them where to find the logs that showed discrepancies in toxic material storage and usage. Sheriff's deputies showed up and raided the offices. Field supervisors from 10 years ago that had retired got subpoenaed. It was epic. Cost the company massively in fines and remediation, all because you wanted to fuck with one poor bastard. Here we have Grumpy Scapegoat saying, I used math to prove to their superior how severely my boss had underestimated turnover 3+ years in a row, costing a ton of money and labor issues. One day earlier, the boss had screamed at my team until his face went purple, making a huge spectacle in front of the entire floor. The gist was that we were colluding against the company by a handful of us electing not to renew our contracts. Came back with graphs and maths, baby. He was demoted and transferred out a couple weeks later. Pro tip, don't make a grumpy scapegoat out of someone who loves to make Excel graphs. I've told it before, not fired but transferred. Had a squad leader make us all stand out in the Missouri winter soaking wet until someone volunteered for weekend duty. I told him I had previous cold weather injuries, frostbite. He ignored it. The corporal saw my blue feet when I took off my boots and sent me to the aid station. The doctor lost his shit, and the squad leader was in another company the next day. It's not as justice bonering as getting an asshole fired, but it's the army. That's not gonna happen. Another fan favorite here, Sexy Broad, saying, I got my boss disbarred. He was an attorney who was a serial sexual abuser of female clients / criminal defendants. He got away with it for over 20 years and preyed upon at least 12 different victims. The Office of Attorney Regulation censured him multiple times for other offenses, like being late to pay his annual bar fees, but even though they knew about at least 5 of the victims, they wouldn't disbar him. I discovered that the Office of Attorney Regulation decides whether to pursue an action against an attorney based on a cost-benefit analysis. I gathered as much documentation of everything as I could over a 6-month period. Hero. I agree, my friend. I agree. Here we got TDA Snowman saying, By doing so much, it started an investigation into what they were actually doing during their workday. Officially, she was fired for sending nudes through corporate email, but the only reason they were tracking her email was to understand what she was spending her time on. Turns out, it was an affair. I had a boss who refused to make accommodations for a disabled coworker, refused to keep other staff in line, and basically let the disabled worker fall behind and get picked on because she, the boss, felt like she was not required to do anything else. I worked for a local government agency and reported it to our HR and upper management. After they did nothing, I contacted them again to let them know I would be filing a suit with the ACLU for ADA violations. My boss was gone in 2 weeks, and the rest of the staff had mandatory ADA trainings. Here we have our friend GL35791 saying, I worked in a bar and I caught my supervisor giving her and her friends free drinks and taking bottles home. They reviewed the CCTV and found that she was also dealing drugs from behind the bar, and she was fired the next day. Here we got our friend Knock the Mighty saying, proof he didn't know how to do his job and was just passing my work off as his. Wow, I thought this was normal. You must have mad skills. Nah, just in an industry where if you got a basic knowledge of the field, people think you are really smart. Clumsy Katie here saying, I got a manager fired because he sexually harassed me on Facebook. Good. Arjun1216 saying, we caught him beating his meat. I take it he wasn't the cook of a schnitzel restaurant? Here we got Nothing saying, I work for the federal government and we have a yearly review for all employees to fill out where you can rank your management. Enough people complained that it caught someone's attention and they sent in auditors to investigate. Our boss was incompetent and cost us necessary funding because they simply weren't doing their job. What got them fired in the end, though, was time fraud. Auditors found it when doing the general investigation about the complaint. Here we got Take a Top Taco saying, he confided in me that he was banging a staff member, told me he would stop. About a year later, he's still doing it and everyone pretty much knows. He keeps promoting her. I sent in a few anonymous tips to HR, which led to a few investigations and ultimately his dismissal. New boss got rid of a temp worker when he found out she was pregnant. I had his motivation for getting rid of her in an email, which I forwarded to HR. Bye, fucker. He was a piece of shit. I'd heard about old school sexism but never got to experience it firsthand. He treated me and other women like crap, and he wanted to shoehorn me into a position that I'd been promoted from 3 times over because he thought it'd make me quit. He was let go 4 months after he started. Called the head office and suggested they do a random drug test on him. He constantly treated me like shit, said horrible things about me behind my back to literally all of my coworkers, and said racist things to my one black coworker. I knew for a fact he was always on coke, so fuck him. You make me lose my job, I'll make you lose yours. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If I had to get the moral of the story of all these stories, it's pretty much, if you're already doing something you're not supposed to, why are you fucking around even more? You feel me? See y'all later. Peace.